So almost of it was right, except the pronunciation of my last name, and he even asked. But that's the problem with being Danish. So nobody can pronounce it. But I do respond to various variations. Even with my first name, I even respond to Gitte, which is Dutch. So, no, that's why I'm never going to marry you, because I can't pronounce your last name. And you can't pronounce mine, so it wouldn't work. Sorry to break your heart. What I'm going to talk about today is mostly my story. But what I'm also going to talk about is about safety and about feeling safe enough to be uncomfortable. Safety has been up in the media and everywhere for the last 3-4 years, but it's actually from the 60s. Psychological safety is from 65, the term. But often people confuse it with being comfortable. I know a lot of people who say, oh, we don't want safety because then you'll never learn because you won't get out of your comfort zone. But safety is a way for you to get out of your comfort zone. It's a way for you to feel safe enough to get out of your comfort zone. And hopefully, when I'm done, you'll know a little bit more about that. Maybe. So what I'm going to talk about is my story. And I'm going to try to draw lines to how my story allowed me to be who I am and to be all of what I am. But to start in the beginning, it wasn't actually very nice. Most of my life, I believed that it was wrong being me. I believed that the things I did, the things I believed in, were wrong. I was told that helping people was a waste of time, and the believing that I could make the world better was just stupid. As I grew up and still liked dragons and pirates and stuff like that, I was told this is not for grown-ups. When are you going to grow up? I had an abusive mom, alcoholic and psychologically abusive, who taught me I was worth nothing. I was just talking to a friend who had sort of the same upbringing, and she said, I think my parents brought me up to take care of them. And that's how I was brought up. I was brought up to take care of my mom and not take care of me. It also means I suck at asking for help. I was almost 35 the first time I properly asked for help, because I have learned that I can do almost anything by myself. Doesn't matter what it is, I can do it. And I've had it so much that it doesn't even occur to me that I can ask for help for stuff I can do myself. And that's one thing I'm really practicing. One thing we've been doing very much this week, we have a group of people that have a Slack channel, and one thing we do very much is support each other and help each other. I have turned down, I think, at least 20 people who wanted to help me with my talk this week because I couldn't make it fall into place. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good. And hopefully I am. You'll be the judge of that. But I could have accepted that help, and I still don't know how, and that's part of what I need to learn. So before 2011, I spent so much of my time being afraid. Afraid of being me, afraid of being seen. When you look at me now, it's hard to understand, but I would try to blend in with the wallpaper. I would try for no one to see me at all, to not be recognized by anyone. I did have a dream that one day I might save someone from a heart attack on a bus or something, and I would get famous and people would actually like me. But that was just tiny dreams, and I wasn't saying them out loud. And then, in 2011, I came to the Agile Coach Camp in Germany. And before that, I had this feeling of being the only one in my family with a crooked nose. It was like, I was always the odd one out. I'm the only one that took a university degree. I'm still the only one who doesn't have kids. I loved reading. There were so many things where I was different. And all of a sudden, I come to this place, and I was terrified. Because I didn't know anyone. I hated doing things on my own. The friend that I was going to meet there turned up to be sick, so he didn't come. And I come into this society that is a community. It's friendship, it's caring. And all of a sudden, there were other people who looked strange. Other people who believed that you can change the world. Other people that believe that sharing is okay. And for the first time in my life, I belonged somewhere. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had a tribe. And the reason I use the notes is like, it's like being, you're adopted, you know it, and people love you, and they embrace you, but you have this crooked nose, and you don't know why. And all of a sudden, you meet all these people, and you realize, you're not the only one. You're not the only one who actually believes we can do an effort in the world, we can change things. You're not the only one who's crazy enough to open your doors for students so they can sleep on your air mattresses when they are helping out at a conference. There are other people like this. And to me, this changed my life. I came home and people kept asking, have you been doing drugs all weekend? Because I couldn't stop smiling. I couldn't get the grin off my face. So I started believing more in what I did. I started figuring out that maybe it was okay to be me. And I kept struggling with this about changing so much, and my friend Alexei said, no, it's not about changing who you are. It's about becoming who you've always been. And I've taken this to heart, and this is what I tell people. It's about peeling off those layers that culture puts on us, that we put on us because we're afraid. That other people, we try to live up to expectations. It's about peeling off these layers and becoming who we've always been, so that we can be ourselves. And the interesting part was, as I started digging out, I realized that maybe there were links to the rest of my life. So when I was a young kid, we had Care Bears. This is Tenderheart. He's the leader of the Care Bears. He's the one that helps people show and express their feelings. He's the one who organizes them so they can actually spread love and care all over the world. And he's the one who initiates new members into the Care Bear family. And this, for a long time, has been my job, so to say, in the Agile community. I embrace and I try to make sure that every time I go to a coach camp, every time I go to something where we're loads of people, that we embrace the new people. Because we need and we want new people. And there was a discussion yesterday on Twitter about when I'm alone at a conference, it's really hard to go up to someone. And sometimes we are people who know each other and we forget that that makes it hard for other people to come up to us when we're a bunch talking in a crowd. But I do try, at least. The thing about showing and expressing feelings, I didn't do in 11 because I didn't really know that it was actually a thing. I didn't know that it was important, but I do it very much now. I also made this sentence. Whoops. Okay, too much clicking. Luckily, I have the English version of it as well. If we all do something that matters a little to us, but a lot to someone else, we can make the world a better place. This is from when I was 9. But I was afraid to say it out loud, because people made fun of me. And if we do this every day, and it can be a smile, it can be holding a door, it can be giving someone a lift. Often you will have someone, okay, I'm going close to the train station. Might take me 5 minutes more, but it will take 40 minutes for the other person to take a bus. That changes lives. And those small things can make the world better. And I started now actually saying this out loud. And the people I already knew, most of them started calling me a hippie. In the beginning, I felt very uncomfortable because I was not a hippie. And now I know that I am. I don't do the drugs part. Never got into that. But I do believe in love. I do believe in care. I care about people. I've always cared about all people around me. My sister says, I don't know how you do it. How can you just sit next to someone and they tell you the life story? And I said, I don't know. Now I know it's because I care and I listen. And I think that's part of being the hippie, is we believe we can make the world better. We believe that if we just use love, we can fight all the badness. It takes a lot of skill, it takes a lot of stamina, but we can fight it. This tribe in Germany became my safe place to grow and explore. And I think this is really essential, and this is something I've brought with me to workplaces when I started organizing coach camps. We need to create a safe place. The hugging started out in 2012 when I went to a retrospective facility gathering. which terrified me because I was just a Scrum Master, and there were all these really famous people, and there was just little me. But I was still safe enough to offer hugs. And when I offer hugs, it's about giving my attention to that person. Because way too often we don't see people. We just pass them on the streets. A hug for me can be physical. I do love physical hugs. I can do triple hugs, I can do double hugs, I can do all kinds of hugs. I am very good at doing calming hugs. I have been before a lot of talks this week and helping people actually just breathe. But I also do non-physical hugs. Because not everyone likes to be touched. And even if you do, you might not like to be touched by anyone. So having someone and giving them my attention is also a hug. I started spreading glitter. I didn't bring anything now because I realized that glitter is really bad for the environment. So I had it all destroyed, and then I only have biodegradable glitter, which is a thing, apparently. For like 6 months, I was like, shit, what am I going to do? I need glitter. But there is biodegradable glitter. What I started to do also was talking about this more. So at the Coach Camp in Germany, we have an open space, or we open the space in the evening, and we always have lightning talks. And I found out that at the last Play for Agile, which is another unconference, there was this guy who felt really uncomfortable because he didn't like hugging. And he felt like he was not allowed to say no, because everyone around him was hugging. And since this was an important thing to me, I started to talk about this. And I was so nervous because I know a lot of people like to hug. And I know that people who hug someone who doesn't like it, they're not doing it to be mean. They're doing it because they care. And they just forget to take that step back and go, is the other person actually interested in this? So I started doing this lightning talk, very powerful lightning talk, about taking care of ourselves, about saying no, and that it's always okay to say no. And that a conference is a place, and a non-conference at least, is a place with few people, where we all have the same interests. It's a safe place to say no. But it's also a place where peer pressure is really high, because you have a lot of people around you who are like you. And there might be one or two things where you're not like them, and you don't want to stand out. So I encourage people to also watch out and go, what about you? Would you like a hug? Pay attention. And slowly I started giving this talk into more about, in general, about safety. I always start out by the hug part. And I have a few friends who doesn't like hugging, so I illustrated that their favorite hug is actually the handshake. And that's perfectly fine. But I started speaking about this. And actually I thought, people might be tired of hearing it. So this year, which was now my 11th or 12th time at this venue, and I did my usual talk, a woman came up to me and she said, well, I must admit, I was getting a little bit tired of you saying this every time, but I was just at an on-conference and nobody said it, and I realized it wasn't a safe space. The fact that you explicitly say to people, I expect you to take care of yourself, and I expect you to take care of each other, that makes such a big difference. And that's something I also do when I do workshops. So stating things explicitly is something that makes a huge difference. And it feels a little bit silly. But I find out it's the same every time I work with a team and they do their team manifesto or team rules or working agreement, whatever they choose to call it. If they talk about asking for help, it makes it so much easier to ask for help. And we all know we are allowed to ask for help, but we need to say it out loud. I also talked about misogyny, because there was someone making stupid jokes about the women there, and I just totally exploded. It was like a line of long things, and it was just the last drop. And I don't even remember a thing I said. And people said I was like a lava mountain. Ice on the outside, lava inside, totally cool. The funny thing was that people thought that the misogyny talk was very, very brave, and that hug talk was just me talking. And it was actually the opposite way around. Because the misogyny was someone pissing in my backyard. Someone going into my safe space and making it unsafe. And I would not accept that. And recently I did a talk in London, and one guy came up to me and says, "You have this passion, but you also have a rage." And I realized, yes, I have this rage when people are treated unfair. Whether it's women, whether it's black people, whether it's gay people, trans people, whatever. White people. It doesn't matter. We need to have this fairness, and I have this rage, and I use it. But, so when I do this, I don't need courage because it matters so much. But when I talk, and I know someone in the crowd who might be affected by that, that's the scary part. So I learned that my two main skills are listening and caring. And I thought this was embarrassing. I worked for 6 months with a coaching company, and we were a bunch of coaches, and one day we had a coach camp, and we were putting up all the tools we used, and they used all these things, and some of them I can't even pronounce. Like Kevin, I know it now. You just have to say Kevin and then a little bit more. But I still don't know how to use it properly. I know how to use parts of it, and I realized I don't use all these tools. I listen to people and I care. My company name is Native Wired, and one of my friends said, "You need to pick this name because you are natively wired to be a coach. You just do things by instinct." And maybe some of it is instinct, but most of it is actually my upbringing. That is what makes me really good at listening. And now I'm just listening for different things. So in 13, I did my first public talk about being brave, about being vulnerable. I got my tattoo, the small part here, about being brave in 12. And it's about having the courage to be who I am and not who everyone else wants me to be. And then someone challenged me to do a public talk, and I did. And it was quite interesting. I couldn't find any pictures of me from before 2011, except maybe me making faces sometimes. Because I had the idea that if I made face on the picture, at least I decided that I looked ugly. If they just took a picture of me and I looked ugly, it would mean that I was ugly. The other way I decided. And this was me in 13, where I'm trying to take a serious picture for a conference, and I just couldn't stop giggling. I never laughed out loud before 2011. I never felt safe enough to laugh out loud. And then in the next year, I created a workshop about courage, because I realized that courage was something that was really important to me. And one of the things I discovered in 13, because a friend talked to me, he said, "I loved your talk, except that you apologize for being you. I want you to read this book by Brené Brown." Brené Brown is an amazing woman who does research in shame. She started out by women because she thought that shame was more predominant than women. It turns out it's not. But women are mostly ashamed of different things. So now she also has done the same research with men. She has an amazing TED Talk about vulnerability. And I realized that this is so hard to do, and that people are actually brave, but they just don't know it. So I created this workshop together with my friend Torbjørn, over Twitter, of course. We actually created it over Twitter. We met on a hangout for 1 hour, and then we did a 3-hour workshop. After only having met each other once before. That was also very brave. But it worked out. It worked out because we both care about it so much. And one of the things I started looking at was comfort zones. That we actually have a comfort zone, and we really like to be in a comfort zone. Our brain likes to be in a comfort zone because it's nice, we don't use as much energy. The problem is, if we stay in our comfort zone, we are not going to grow, we're not going to learn. Maybe a tiny bit, but not much. What we need to do is go out into our growth zone or our learning zone. But if we are pushed, we risk going into our danger zone, our panic zone. So I was trying to figure out ways of how can I help encourage people, how can I help pull people out, be there, wait for them, take them out. And that's how I kind of talked about it for many years. And then I realized last year that it also changes. We all have days, I think, where we have this tiny comfort zone. And we might be able to grow a tiny bit, but basically we just want to hide under the covers and not do anything new or anything else. It's also context dependent. You can have a bad day. If you sleep really badly, then you are not going to be as open to things as if you sleep well. So I realized that this changes all the time, but we have the opportunity to change them ourselves. We have the opportunity to train it. I really sucked at it in the beginning because for the first time in my life, I had courage to do things. So I kept doing and kept doing and kept doing and kept doing. So I had to make a new talk. Because I realized that this was stressing me like hell. I realized that the 2 times I had a burnout before was actually because I did stuff that I loved. And I realized that people were not talking about this, especially men. There's a big problem with men talking about these things. That's one of the reasons why the main cause of death for men between 15 and 45 in Germany, Sweden, England, and Denmark is suicide. Men do not often talk about their feelings. And I was talking to this guy, and he said, yeah, I started crying in the office one day, but the next day I was good. It was fine. It was no problem. So I started talking about this. I put it in, and I wasn't sure if anyone wanted to listen to it. The room was packed, and it's still one of the talks I am asked to do the most. I did it at a developer conference with 1,800 people. 1,800 people came to hear about stress and depression because it's such a big problem for us, and nobody talks about it. So I try to address the things that other people don't address as well. And sadly, I'm really good at doing this. I have been on the verge of a burnout again, so I'm not going to work for a few months now. So that's one thing I still need to learn is I'm really good at seeing my signals now. I just need to stop as well. But that's also one of the reasons why people listen. Because they know I'm not just talking about, oh, you should do this and that. I've done it. I've tried it. I know what works for me. I know it doesn't work for everyone. But I tried it. Then I decided to change my hair. Oh dear. I really got in trouble for that in my family. My grandmother's words were, well, it's not making you look any younger. And everyone was talking to me about, it's going to be a problem with your professional career. And I was like, I'm working at Lego, right? They were like, if you go to Lego, especially to the creative part, you have a ton of people who look interesting. And that's okay. So in the beginning, I just did it for fun. And then I realized that this was me. It felt so much me, and I haven't changed it back since. And another thing that I've come to realize the last few years is it actually helps me. It helps me as an Agile coach, because when I come in, people get confused. They go like, oh, whoa. And that's about juggling their brain, shaking it. They get confused. They start thinking differently. That's one thing that it helps me with. And the other part is they can see that I'm me. I'm just me. Nobody else. And that makes people feel comfortable. Being authentic, being who you are on the inside and the outside, being the same. People can feel that. I got a really good name for it the other day. One of my friends said, it's because you are so unapologetically you. Which I totally love, because in 13 I was told about how much I apologize for being me. And yes, I sometimes fall into the traps, especially when I'm not feeling well. But most of the time I am just me. What you see is what you get. It's also really hard for some people, because I will set clear expectations. And I will follow up on them. And if people commit to something to me and they don't do it, I will follow up and I will probably be disappointed. I expect people, if they commit to something, to either do it or tell me that they can't before I come ask them. So this also gives me a little bit of reputation of bad cop, Actually, I was in one situation where I was evil cop. So we were 3 coaches, so we had good cop, bad cop, and evil cop. Because I would start my trainings on time. I would expect people to do the things that they're committed to. And I think this about, setting clear expectations, stating this is what I expect, and allowing this to be challenged and inviting for it is really helpful as well. Then I was invited to speak at Lean Camp Days London. This guy comes up to me and he's like, "Hi, I'm Jose." Another Jose that I'm in this conference. "Hi, I'm Jose. I would like you to speak at my conference." And I'm like, "Okay. So what would you like me to speak about?" "I don't care. I hear you're a good speaker." And I was like, shit. So I decided to talk about the imposter syndrome. I don't know if you know the imposter syndrome, but basically it's about feeling like an imposter. You feel like at some point somebody's going to find out that I'm not a proper speaker. I'm not a proper Agile coach because I don't know all the theories. I'm not a proper developer. I'm not a whatever. Up to 70% of the Western populations has this at some point in their lives. So I started speaking about this. And again, I got so many reactions. Almost every single time I do this, someone comes up to me crying afterwards saying, "I thought I was all alone." Which is one of the reasons I talk about this. I got an email recently from Brazil because someone who was married to a developer saw this and it changed something they did at her workplace. We need to talk about these things. We need to show our vulnerability because then other people can see that we are not perfect. My friend that I coach with, Susa, just went to a conference and she's like, "After I got to know you, I see all the speakers differently. I thought they were all really cool people and had everything under control." Yeah. Yes, like Alex said, ha. Sometimes we do, but most of the times we're just humans. Actually, I've come to the point where I never feel nervous when I'm on stage anymore, which is quite strange. I can be not happy with my talk, but I don't feel nervous anymore. In 2006, I was asked by my manager to be able to speak with my team. But I did this talk about imposter syndrome because I suffer from it really badly. But by doing that, first of all, I made myself vulnerable to other people, which means that they now come to me. And I learned a lot of good techniques to handle it. Because it turns out only smart people have imposter syndrome. Which is why I put this one up. I'm not good enough for the imposter syndrome. So this is Torbjørn that I did the courage workshop with. I mean, we organized it over Twitter, and we did a hell of a workshop. And still we're kind of like, yeah, but we're not really. But that's what the imposter syndrome does to you. It's helped me also move into going into areas where I'm really good, instead of just focusing on all the things I should learn. Because one of the things about imposter syndrome, you realize you can't do everything. And that's actually one of the reasons we get it, is because we learn there's so much we don't know. And the more we know we don't know. And that's one of the big problems. So I took this about imposter and I use it very much to talk to people, I can see sometimes when they're insecure. And often they just tell me because they know that I'm also insecure sometimes. So I'm not dangerous. So when I came into 2016, I created 2 goals. One was to accept and embrace all of myself, and the second one was to get paid what I'm worth. Actually, I had 3, but I can't even remember what it was because I never really reached it. But I started looking into embracing all of me because I felt like, okay, I didn't even like myself before 2011. Now I actually love the part about myself, about being brave, about listening, about caring. But I hated the parts about the times where I just want to curl up in a ball and cry, and the whole world is evil, and I don't know how the Earth is going to survive. Well, actually, I know how the Earth is going to survive, but not humanity, because we're just horrible. And I don't like that. I hate that being weak. I like being strong. I like being powerful. And the other part was that I kept doing all these things that were soft skills. And it didn't really feel right. I didn't appreciate it. I was invited to do a panel about What do we do with the other idiots? We tried to get the title changed, but it was already in the program. Because what we wanted it to be was, what do we do with the other people? Because the thing is, often we have them and us. And we wanted to look at it from different perspectives. So we had Dr. Saliane Freudenberg, who is very much into neurodiversity, who wrote her PhD in the psychology of pair programming. We had Linda Rising, who's actually also a doctor, Linda Rising. Most of you know her, so I don't have to say why. I was a little bit overwhelmed. Linda very much looks into how our brain works, how things react. She's very much into patterns. And Liz Keogh, who is one of you people who actually understand Kinevin and can explain it. I mean, I've tried to listen to Dave Snowden and explain it, but his vocabulary is too academic for me. I don't get what he's saying, and he makes me feel stupid. Liz has a way of explaining it so I actually get what she's saying. And she's a really good developer, and I come in, I kind of bring all the soft stuff, like the human stuff. So I'm kind of like, what the fuck am I doing in this panel? And I was really struggling with it and considering if I should just bail out so I wouldn't look stupid. And at the same time, I was working with a coach, Peter Marino from Belgium, and he has this ability to kind of just go all in, and all of a sudden you just open up. And I realized that basically I was ashamed of all my soft skills. I was not ashamed because I was me, I was ashamed because my mom was. My mom had spent most of my life, well, most of her life with me, shaming me for the soft skills. Not praising me for my hard skills. I've always been the smart girl. I've always been the one who was really good in mathematics, physics, Danish. When I was in France, I got in the newspaper because I was one of the ones with the highest grade who wasn't French. All these things, but so that's what was valuable, and people praised me for that. Not my mom, because, it was never good enough. But I never got praised for my soft skills. So I had been conditioned to think that soft skills were bad. And what Peter did was, he took me by the hand and he led me into this shame, and he allowed me to feel it. Until I felt that it wasn't mine. It still took a while to get out of this and to kind of figure out, you know what, I'm actually really good at what I do. I should have just listened to some of the old grumpy men, right, George? In 14, George said to me, you think your power is in the brain because you're smart. Your true power is in your heart. That is where your power lies, and that's where you will be magnificent. And he was so true. I am really smart, but I'm also heart smart. I care about people, I listen to people, I sense people. That is where my true power lies. So I started to embracing that. And one of the side effects was actually that I started wearing dresses. It might sound strange, but I never felt feminine before. And with pocket psychology, as we call it in Denmark, I think that part of it is because I never recognized the soft side, so I never saw the femininity, because we have this stereotype femininity. We have these tall, beautiful women who are like this thin and have breasts like this and look beautiful and can walk in high heels and cook and work and everything. And that's not how I look. So I never felt I was feminine. And realizing that all my values were actually, well, a lot of my values, a lot of my skills were actually feminine, helped me become my feminine, not anyone else's. And then an interesting part was my doctor said to me, your curse is your gift. The thing that stresses you, the thing that gives you depression, is your sensitivity. It is also your gift. You can't have one without the other. And as all of you know, Stan Lee just died, and I thought this was such a nice tweet. At the heart of every great Stan Lee Marvel character is transformation. The idea of taking a weakness and making it a strength. He empowered the awkward and the misfits. He made us feel like our differences had a point. That's what I learned about myself I learned that my weakness, the fact that I am very vulnerable, that I break sometimes, that is what makes me powerful. That is what makes me a really, really good listener. It turns out that if you've grown up in an abusive environment, whether it is violence, sexual, drugs, alcoholics, whatever, you are really good at reading minds. Because you never know when the situation will change, so you look at people's faces. There was a series some time ago called Lie to Me, where they actually read faces. Turns out there's a certain amount of muscles in our face, and every single emotion has a combination of muscles. You can actually learn how to read this. They use it sometimes in couples therapy, where they can actually tell if this couple is going to stay together or not, with I think it's like a 90% probability, which is pretty good. But people who grow up in abusive environments also learn how to see these signals, which also means that we can sometimes be a little bit scary, because we will read your mind, or it will seem this way. I've now learned to trust these things. If I do a coaching and I sit there listening and this question pops up, I'm going to ask it. I used to not, because I would go like, wait, that's a stupid question, why would I ask that? And then I tried a few times and it turns out it's not a stupid question. I still don't know what I do. It can be some kind of movement, someone blinks, they change, they look a different way when they talk about something. I don't know what it is, and it doesn't matter. It's something that I've learned somewhere and integrated. And it allows me to ask those questions. And it does make people feel uncomfortable sometimes. But I try to create a safe environment. 2016 was also the year I started working more on inclusion. So I'm a member of Inclusive Collaboration, which is about creating working environments for all kinds of people. We have been focusing a lot on neurodiversity. Like we have a quiet room here. A lot of people are introverts. They need this space. But what we've also been working with, for instance, autism and ADHD, and how can we create working places for this? Sally Ann wrote this really good book with a lot of things you can try out with your teams. For instance, doing things without speaking. Having a workshop where you create something without speaking. I hated that the first time. I went up to my room and cried for 3 hours. Because what I'm really good at is listening and encouraging people. And for both, I need voice. I need their voice or my voice. I didn't know what to do, and also because I'm quite clumsy, so I felt like I couldn't help. The interesting part was that nobody else felt it was uncomfortable. They did feel my encouragement, but I didn't. So it was really healthy for me to do these things. Learning what is it like for other people if you can't speak? How do you collaborate when you can't speak? I've always been very much encouraging of love is love. I believe that if you find someone you love, that's so hard. We should embrace it in all forms. As long as they're grown-ups, as long as there's consent, who cares? It's also made some interesting questions for me, because if you're single for a long time and you promote equal marriage, you're apparently gay. Especially if you get blue hair in 2014. I now realize that there was a film in 2014 called The Girl with the Blue Hair, which is because I was like, why are you talking about blue hair? What does that have to do with coming out? Well, apparently there was a movie about that. I started stating my pronouns because I found out that for trans people, this is a really big problem. It's something that I never thought about, but that's because I have privilege. And again, it matters very little to me to state my pronouns on my Twitter profile or when I do a talk. But for trans people, I am now helping them normalize stating your pronouns. I really stepped it in with some racism at some point, so I am quite naive sometimes, and I made the mistake of asking a black woman if it was tougher to be a black woman than a white. Before I learned about how bad racism is and still is in the US. I had an idea that racism was something that was in the 60s, until like 4 or 5 years ago, and I was shocked. I was also shocked about her reaction because I tried to be kind and ask a question. If someone comes up to me, what's it like to be a woman in IT? I will either go, sorry, I don't feel like talking about it, or I will tell them. I would never say, "You're such a misogynist bastard." And I got the "you're a racist bastard" back, so I was like a little bit shocked about that. But it also means that I now speak up about it more, and I try to help more. Being more aware of it. The first time I spoke in New York, I realized that, whoa, there's like Hispanic and black people everywhere. And then taking a step back and going, wait, if I see this, it's because I'm not used to seeing them. I'm not used to seeing them at our conferences. I'm not used to seeing them at our workplaces. In Denmark, we often see that engineers have to change Arabic names to even get a job interview. They send in 2 job applications with the same description, Danish name, Arabic name. Only one of them gets an interview. So I try to fight for all these things. So this is really what I do. I find problems really fast. I'm really going like, doom. So this is Kai that I coached when I was in Germany, and he said to me after the first time, he said, it felt so uncomfortable. I felt like I was naked in front of you. So we agreed on some signals so that I would step back if he felt this way. Because he says, I feel like I have no choice. I have to tell you everything. Which is very uncomfortable for some people who are used to hiding things. But what he also said is, you see it really fast, you help me see what's going on, and then you take me by the hand and you lead me to comfort again. It's not comfortable, but it's safe. And I think that's what we need to do when we talk about a lot of the things in our environment. If we want to change things, we need to have a safe environment where we can be uncomfortable, where there's someone to hold our hand who says, okay, let's talk about this. Let's figure out what we can do. Let's figure out how we can grow. And that's something we need to do as a community as well. In last year, I did a workshop on effective communication with Aki Salmi that we planned over Twitter. But this time we actually met a full weekend and prepared the workshop. And some of the stuff we used is from family therapy, where he has been working. And I really love this picture about when you do communication, it's not just about skills, it's about attitude. It's about how do you see people when you go in. If you expect people to be stupid, they're probably going to be stupid. If you expect people to be smart and resourceful, they're probably going to be smart and resourceful. Of course, you can learn a lot of skills about how to communicate, how to give and receive feedback. But if you don't have the attitude, you don't have that balance. And you need the same balance for you and for the other person. If you only look at the other person, you're never going to find a balance about which attitude you have. So that's also something that I keep bringing out, because we have so many techniques that are very fancy. It's a little bit the same when we talk about the Scrum meeting. The 3 questions can either be really good or it can suck. I know a lot of people use nonviolent communication in a very violent way. It's quite easy to just use the recipe and make it violent. Same as it's very easy to take Scrum and make it agile or not agile. There's so many things where we need that attitude, where we need to think about things. I did a talk the year after about being human and professional is mutually exclusive. Because I felt I kept going into these barriers about being who I was. Well, actually I didn't, because I just went in. Kind of found a confidence about I am who I am. If you can't take it, it's your problem. I'm not going to work here. But most people don't have it this way. And I see people coming in and putting on this facade. So I decided to start talking more about this, because I think we damage ourselves. I spent so much of my life pretending to be someone I was not, pretending to be someone who was a grown-up. I had only one Yoda figure. Now I kind of have a few. Only 19 was the last count, except for the Lego ones. But they're in sets, so that doesn't really count, does it? I only have one Jedi robe because I gave the other one away. I do have, yes, a traveling lightsaber. I also have a traveling Yoda and a traveling Christmas Yoda, because I travel a lot. And now when people say, when are you going to grow up? I'm kind of like, are you kidding me? I am grown up. How else can I afford to buy all the Lego I have? My Jedi robe. That's a cool part about being a grown up. So the energy that I have, I now use for other stuff. And I want other people to do this as well. And then last year, I discovered there was something called psychological safety. I was like, ooh, this is interesting. And I started working with it. And it's about showing and employing yourself without fear of negative consequences. This is from Khan, who did an article about it in 1999. He's a psychologist. And in the Agile world, we have Joshua Karievsky, maybe, who talks about not being afraid to make mistakes, to be yourself, to raise problems, to take risk, to disagree or ask questions. And what I really like about this, it has the be yourself. If you listen to Susan Edmondson, who also talks a lot about this, she talks very much of it from a management point of view. We do this because we need people to be safe, to have innovation. We need people to be safe, to admit mistakes. She started out by doing research in hospitals, figuring out that it looked like the departments who were most safe or had a better environment had more medicine problems. It turned out that they felt safe enough to report medicine problems. We need these things, but what she doesn't include is the thing about being yourself. And I find this is so essential. We work with so complex things, like people, for instance, and software. We need all the brain power we can get. We don't need to use brain power by pretending to be something else. So I looked at this and I went like, that's really interesting, but that's not me anymore. Agile testing days, it's the only place where Superman and Captain America can help you onto a unicorn. But what I mean is, I now have a presence, I have a confidence that I never had before. I go on a stage and I don't feel nervous anymore. If you say, will you do a talk in front of 3,000 people tomorrow? I'll go like, sure, what do you want me to talk about? And I'll just make up something. So this year, for some reason, people started calling me badass. And I was like, this is interesting. I got a little bit last year as well. People came to me, a lot of women came to me during the Me Too campaign, women I never met, and said, will you listen to my story? And I started asking why. And they said, because you're badass. Because you don't take any shit. Which was interesting because I didn't know it was a reputation I had. But when I think about it, that's true. I don't take any shit anymore. I spent way too much time in my life doing this. So I use that power to fight now. And I know there's been some discussions about, we talk a lot about women at this conference. And for many, many years, I did not call myself a feminist for that reason, because I saw a lot of feminists talking about women only. But if we only help women, we're just doing the same thing. We need to help boys to be able to have feelings. We need to stop this stupid shit of boys don't cry. As I said, I'm a really good listener. And sometimes when I go in and have a 10-minute conversation about, so, what do you think I can help you with in this team? People start talking because no one ever listened to them before. I met guys who are 40, 50 years old who never talked about their emotions before. That's not healthy. Who cry at home and don't talk to anyone. Who doesn't go for help. We need to change that as well. We need to make it as good for boys to have feelings as we want for women to have powerful jobs. We want to have all that diversity. We want to have diversity in age. We want to have diversity in colors. We want to have diversity in mindset. Because what else do we have? And I see a lot of the diversity we had like 20 years ago was basically just inviting people in, except just be like us. Like a lot of the powerful women I know from a few years ago were basically alpha males. Because that's how you got a leadership job. A lot of the black women I met were basically white. Because if you did not cut your hair properly, if you did not act properly, you did not get that job. That's just diversity, it's not inclusion. We need to invite people to the party, and then we need to allow people to dance their own dance. Because not only for them, but for us. Because if we don't invite them in, if we don't take that inclusion, we're going to miss out. We're going to miss out on awesome stuff. We're going to miss out on making awesome products. But we're also going to miss out on awesome people. So as I say, so one of the things I realized the other day is, for some reason, even though I'm badass, I rarely piss people off. So someone asked me, what is your secret for that on Twitter? And I thought a bit about it, and I thought, this is what I try to do every time I go in somewhere. I try to be kind and respectful. I have patience, except with me. I have so much patience for the people. I don't judge people. At least I try not to, except I do still struggle with people who are racist, or misogynist, or transphobic, and stuff like that, but working on it. I try to bury my ego. If I go in and help a team and they succeed, they don't need to know I helped them. Because they don't need that, they need to be better. If they do recognize that I helped them and they come tell me, I love that. Of course I do, we all do. But I don't need it, that's not why I do it. I try to go in being humble, because I only know so much and people around me know a lot more. But I also come in being confident, because I know that what I know is good stuff. I can always learn, we can always learn. And I can be quite hard, but it always comes from a place of care. And I think that's why people don't react strongly to me, at least very rarely. Even though we can have fights, right, Hype? When we first met, we were in a terrible, terrible fight. If you had asked me the evening before we started talking properly, I would say we would never talk to each other again, ever. And the thing is, I'm also getting a reputation for this. It's spreading out loud. And actually, I didn't want to put this tweet up, and I wanted to pull it up down, but my editor told me, if you take that down, I'm going to get in trouble. I've gotten a reputation for working on psychological safety, which is quite interesting because I only worked for it for about 6 months, but I've been working with safety for a lot longer. So my friend Martin went to a conference, and someone sitting next to him and said, I only know one person in Europe who can actually pull this off. And that's Gitte Klitgaard. And I was like, shit, how does he know? And then, of course, he can't remember who it was. That's so annoying. But I do see that we did work with it. So Morgan, who was here earlier and spoke yesterday, he and I worked with it in an organization. We spent a lot of time because this organization felt it was important. And we changed how safe people felt. And that made a big difference. And part of me is a little bit embarrassed about putting this up, but the other part of me is super proud. Because I helped some people, and that's what I want to do. Because my values are this. I'm authentic. I try to be, even though in the beginning I didn't dare. I believe in sharing and caring and honesty. What you see is what you get. Which also confuses a lot of people, because they expect there's something hidden. What is your hidden agenda? There might not be one. I believe in learning, and I believe in making the world a better place. I believe in creating space for others. I can take more space easily. And I do sometimes need to be better at being quiet. But I'm practicing, and I believe in listening and care. So what I want you to take away from here is that safety is necessary. And it's not always comfortable. And that's why we need the safety. Be vulnerable, being that role model that opens up the first time. And in the beginning, it can only be small things, that's okay. But be vulnerable, because by being vulnerable, you create space for others to be vulnerable. Be that uniqueness that is you, because you are the only one that has your experience, the only one in the whole world. And that uniqueness is important. That is what makes you a superhero. Care. If you work in a place you don't care about, leave. Why do you want to spend so much time in a place you don't care about? Care about the people around you. And listen. Listen to people. I went to a conference with Selena, with the Dalai Lama, and he said, the things we need to change the world is education, compassion, and listening. That's what we need. and have patience. Stuff like psychological safety doesn't come easy. And it doesn't help if you say, hey, I told people to be safe, I don't know why they're not. Which is a true quote. So, I know I'm way over time, sorry. Yesterday, Ashley asked us, what change do you feel is necessary? And this is what I want. I want a world where it's okay to be and not always do. We do. That's why we're praised. What's the first thing we ask people? So what do you do? Let us just be. I want a world where we're kind to each other, where we accept and respect and support each other in all our differences. And I want a world of care. That's what I want. That's a change I want to see. And I'm not sure how to get there yet. I try to do it with everyone I meet. I hope that it spreads, and that's all I can do. Thank you for listening.